This is a podcast about failure. With me, Lola Berry, author, nutritionist, and yoga teacher. Join me as we get to know these guests and learn about how their failures have ultimately shaped their dreams. Welcome to Fearlessly Failing with Lola Berry. Hello. For those of you that are new to the pod, I'm living in LA, and so this Monday episode where I interview a guest, it's now recorded in real life with people from LA, the city of angels, the land of dreams. So today's guest is the wonderful Jackie Diamond. She is an acting teacher, a producer, a director. She's worked in casting. She's headed up the Australian Theatre Company here. Unstoppable force. She's also teamed up and worked with John Patrick Shanley. Goals, life goals. She's worked with Larry Moss. She's worked with Ian Sinclair. This human is super humble and hardworking and pretty unreal, if you ask me. And I'm very lucky because I get to call Jackie my teacher. I'm training with her at the Ivana Chubbuck Studio here in Los Angeles. So in the show notes, I'm going to put Jackie's Insta handle. I'm going to put the Ivana Chubbuck Studio details as well. And I will put for the actor website, which is Jackie's personal website as well. So please enjoy this chat. It's really inspiring. She's super courageous, really honest and open, and we touch on some kind of like my own hang-ups about acting. Like I say, I just hold on to the work so much, and we kind of, I get really inspired. And I hope you do too. I'm sure you will, because Jackie is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for jumping on the pod, Jackie. You're unreal. Jackie Diamond. We are recording officially now.
Are we on?
Yeah. So, acting teacher, producer, director, also worked in casting.
Yes.
My first experience and memories of you were me being a student of yours via Zoom in the pandemic.
So great.
And you really nurtured me. I love studying acting, but I tell people it's like swimming with sharks. It scares me a lot as well.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And you took so much of that fear away.
Oh, good. That makes
me
me so happy.
So I'm rapt to be a student of yours again. But I want to know, where did it all begin with you? So you were just saying you grew up in San Diego.
Yeah, I grew up in San Diego in a very conservative family. And so there was no thought of acting or anything like that. That was kind of a crazy notion. So I didn't even really know what it was. But what I did love was just stories and make-believe and telling stories. And I spent my entire childhood. I was a very strange child, I'll tell you that now. That might fill in a few blanks for who I am today. But I was a very strange child. I spent my childhood really just in my own little world. I lived in the world of books. I lived in the world of stories, and just anything make believe. I would build my own worlds in the backyard, or take off on my bike and just find little places that nobody could find, and just stay there all day with a book and a little snack I would put together and imagine that I was somewhere else fabulous. So I did all that, but I didn't know what that was. I wouldn't have. Now in retrospect, it's like, oh yeah, well that's somebody who loves being creative and an actor, and who knows. And
imagination as well.
Yeah, always the imaginary world, right? I actually had an imaginary friend too.
What was its name?
Her name, it was a little girl, and her name was Nena.
Oh,
and
Nena.
And Nena was like part of my childhood growing up. She was just like somebody that went with me everywhere on all my adventures. And it's just funny.
This is skipping ahead, but have you ever used Nena as a substitution in Chubbuck work?
I never have.
I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. She doesn't. I think she played her role.
Yeah,
I think we kind of lived that whole. Her purpose was fulfilled.
So as a kid, you were always into the imaginary world.
Yeah.
Storytelling was really important to you.
Books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when does it become like, hang on, this is my, in yoga we call it dharma. Like this is my purpose.
Yeah.
When does it flick into that?
I think it was a very slow burn because I actually, when I was a kid, I started seeing, other kids on TV and doing things. And I'm like, I could do that.
You had a crush on Jason Bateman.
I did have a crush on Jason Bateman. I still do.
Yeah.
Why not?
Same. I'll join that club.
Let's just say what it is.
But he was an amazing child actor like Teen Wolf.
Yeah. I can't even remember what the show was I used to watch, but it was a sitcom, it's a comedy sitcom.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's very cute.
Yeah.
He's very cute. But who knew he was going to grow up to be even more amazing than, wow, right? We're crushing on Jason right now.
Totally. Well, no, you and I have spoken about him before, but I've also, since last time we caught up, I watched some of his interviews like as a kid, like 15 years old.
Yeah.
Like, so, you're seeing people like that on TV and you're
I
thinking,
I was seeing other like kids my age that were doing things. And I said to my parents, I said, I could be on TV. I could do this. I could act. Why don't you sign me up? How do I do this? I didn't even know what that was. And they had no idea. They're like, I don't know. That's like, it seemed like a whole different world. Like that wasn't available to us. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't available. But I used to watch and think, they're doing it. It's got to be available. It's got to be, And so I started doing my own research. I mean, different times. We weren't Googling anything. But I started doing my own research into it. And I was like, these are actors. This is what they are. They're actors. And they have agents and managers that get them these jobs.
Yeah.
And so I would just be like, this is what I have to do. I have to get an agent or a manager. And none of that, everyone would just laugh it off. It was just the unimaginable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who thinks of these things, Not people in my life growing up. And so I think that's where it all started. And then as I got older, I moved to Los Angeles. I studied fashion design, actually. And then
I can totally see that. You've got good a vibe.
I studied fashion design for a minute. About a year and a half. And then I moved to LA with the job, and I had flatmates, roommates that were actors, of course, because I was in LA and I shared a house with like 4 people. And one of my roommates said, I've got this big theater audition. You have to go with me because I need a reader, and and I'm like, what? How do I do that? What's involved?
What's a reader?
Yeah, what's a reader? How do I do that? Yeah. And so he said, here's the script. Literally, just let's practice it a little bit, and then when I go in for the audition, you just read the other lines. I'm like, great, this is fun. How much fun is this? So I went in. It was a little. I can't even tell you what the theater was, but it was a little theater in Hollywood somewhere. And I went in and read for him during the audition, and he booked the role, which was great. But the director offered me a role in the play. And I'm like, I'm not, this isn't what I do. This isn't me. And he goes, no, I would love for you to do it. And so I was so excited. And I told my roommate, Scott, I was like, he offered me a role. And he got really jealous. And he's like, but you're not even an actor. And I was like, I know, but, I was like, 19. And so, so I went to rehearsals, and I had this scene with this beautiful looking man who was very aware of how beautiful he was.
Yes.
And he was just not at all interested in the fact that I had I'd never done any acting or anything, because he had invited all these bigwigs, all these casting people and studio network people were coming to see it and everything. And he goes, he's like, I've got really important people coming. Like, are you going to be able to do this? And I was like, yes. I mean, they offered me the role. I think I can do it. Yeah. Because I never thought. But
no training at this stage.
No, nothing.
Amazing.
No reason to think I could do this, right? And so I went through rehearsals, and I was starting to question myself a lot. I had so much self-doubt once he started saying that. He's like, the room's going to be filled with a lot of big shots.
Oh, my God.
Like my career is depending on this. And like, if you're not sure, this is the time to say so. And in the end, I just felt so shaken that I was like, I'm not going to do it. Like, bring in someone else. Yeah. And then I thought, I didn't want to be responsible for him not booking something. And it just really shook me. But the thrill of the possibility lived with me. And so then, I started taking acting classes, and and I realized I had a ton to learn, but I had some natural kind of curiosity, I think, more than anything. It wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't say it was a talent, but I've always had a natural curiosity about what would it be like to be that person, I would always take on characters. I would mimic people, just that kind of thing. I just loved it.
And I've seen on your website you've studied with some of the greats.
Yeah, lots of different fabulous people over the years.
But you famously say, Meisner, Uta Hagen, Larry Moss, Elizabeth Kemp, but you famously say Ivana Chubbuck Studio is my home.
Yeah, it is. It's my home. I started studying at the Ivana Chubbuck Studio almost 20 years ago.
And didn't you have to put up a scene recently? Because
I did. And this is, it's been a long time since I've done any acting myself. And but I remember another fabulous teacher that I was working with who I love, and she said to me, if you're not willing to put yourself on that stage and really kind of ask of yourself what you ask of your students, then you have no business teaching. And it's true. It's true. It's like it's so daunting, and we get so settled into, that role of teacher or director or producer or whatever it is. And really for me, like acting was so long ago. And you get out of it and you feel rusty and everything to step back into being the one up on the stage and doing it. But, oh boy, it was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, honestly. And afterwards, I had a lot of really great feedback. And one of them said, didn't it feel good?
Yeah. There's this, you and I have talked about, like, there is this moment, because I talked to you a little bit about, like, I love TV presenting, but I also love acting, and acting scares me, and I love that. But there's something that sometimes happens with acting, and I think I described it to you as, like, it feels like electricity running through your veins, or something bigger than you. Like, it feels very heart-driven, or something that just feels, and it's almost like a drug. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I remember when I first had that experience, I was like, I get it. This is what everyone's chasing. Yeah. This is that like elixir almost. So hats off to you for diving in. And I imagine, like, I think, didn't you say it was with Ivana as well? Like,
yes.
You had,
Ivana said you're going to do the scene for, she had a group of teacher trainees from Europe. Yeah. And they were all amazing, doing this work and delving deep into everything. And so we needed to do some scenes. When I say we, it was not me. I was just sort of observing. And so they needed to have actors put up scenes so that they could give them adjustments and notes and work with them and all of that and do their reworks and all that like they would normally as a teacher. And so that was part of their final certification, their testing process. And so Ivana said to me, I need you to do a scene for one of the teacher trainees. It'll be really simple, just a small scene, you'll be fine. And she's like, it just made me laugh because I thought, how she says you'll be fine, it's like it's so easy for her to say that. And yet, it was a long time. But and I'll tell you, it was not easy. And it's a good reminder of what we ask of our students. It's not easy. We ask so much of them. Yeah. And rightly so, because they need to be asking that much of themselves. Yeah. They need to know that, this is a craft. It's not something you just wing. It's like, it's your instrument, right? So if you were a pianist, you would be rehearsing and working on your technique and that's your instrument. But as an actor, you are your instrument. So you have to be doing that all the time.
Totally. Kim Courageous, who we both know and love, I interviewed her, but at school she'll often be like, this is your Olympics. Mm-hmm. Like, treat this like you're training for your Olympics, like you are an athlete. And that kind of stuck with me because I was like, we better pull our socks up and take this pretty darn seriously.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You should be taking it pretty darn seriously if that's what you want to do. Otherwise, it's a hobby and you can do, whatever you want to do with that. And that's not a bad thing either. I love that people come and do it as a hobby. It's like they want to check it out and see what it's about, but really their real life, they're, I don't know, a veterinarian or whatever else that they do. But they're like, I've always had an inkling for acting. Great, come and play, come and explore and play. But people who want it to be their, that's their thing, that's their profession and that's their passion they're going to devote their life to, then absolutely, you better be treating it seriously, and working every day. And that's one of the things that, strikes me as so strange in a lot of actors, is that they're like, oh, look, I did a class once, or they'll say, I didn't really do any training. I just kind of go with it. And I think, I'm not saying that doesn't exist, that there aren't people who have just this natural ability. I know Heath Ledger famously never took any acting classes until later. Yeah, later on, I think he did. But certainly not when he was, just going for it in the early days. And there's many people like that. But it's something that if you're not really actively engaged in keeping your skills sharp and growing and developing, then, it's like anything, right? It's like if you're not training every day, then you're going to get soft muscles. They're going to sag. You're not going to be able to move as quickly. You're not going to be as flexible, as agile. It's the same thing with acting.
You have to put the work in.
You have to put the work in, and you have to put the work in regularly.
Yeah.
I mean, actors who are doing big things all the time and booking big roles, and we all see them on the screen and we go, well, they're just great actors, but they're working so hard.
Yeah.
They're working so hard all the time, I guarantee it. And it's not always being in class every week. You might have an acting coach that you work with, or you might, be doing theater and you're up there working with the director, for a long period of time. I mean, it's just exercising your skills and sharpening them, and always remembering that no matter how big or great or where you are in your career, that you're always a student. Lifelong learner.
Oh, right? I love that.
Yeah, always, forever. We all should be. I mean, did we get to the point at any stage of our life where we sort of go, that's it, I've learned everything?
Exactly. I have to ask, what took you to Australia? Because I know you have a massive affinity for Australia.
I love Australia and Australians. What took me there was my mind. I decided very early on that I wanted to go to Australia. I think I was 15. I was about 15 because I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I had always dreamt of going to New York and pursuing, theater and acting and everything. Yeah. But at 15, I had this big switch because a lot of things, I think, but, for me personally, like I told you, I was a weird kid and I lived in my own make-believe world of pretend and stories and books and everything. And so I just felt very alone through my teens, definitely felt very alone, like the weird kid. I didn't have like a social circle of friends that I hung out with or anything like that. And it started to take its toll on me, definitely in high school years when people were pretty brutal. I mean, they're brutal before that, but I had a lot of bullying growing up, partly because we lived in a mostly white neighborhood and my mom's Mexican and from Mexico. So her language was, she had a very strong accent, still does. And, she was very traditional. So I wasn't allowed to do things that were popular, like going to the football game and hanging out afterwards for pizza with friends and doing sleepovers and going to school dances and all that stuff. I didn't get to do those things. And so I think around that teen part of my life, I thought, I need to get out of here. Mm-hmm. I don't know who I am. I have no idea who I am because I've never been able to explore what the things I love. I don't know. And so something in me it just became really clear to me. I have to go somewhere where I can be independent and live my own life without being, told that this was okay and this wasn't okay, without that kind of level of strict guidelines.
Yeah.
And so I just became like obsessed with Australia. It seemed so bizarre to me, this place.
So far away.
Yes. So, well, that was the point, right? Where can I go that's as far away from here as possible? And seemed really interesting to me. And also the fact that, there was such great music coming out of Australia at that time, and I was all into music and everything. And so I loved so much of the Australian music that was coming out in the 80s. It was for me, the Divinals, like just Mental as Anything, Midnight Oil, Men at Work, like all these great songs,
iconic anthems,
and Ice House, and like all of these great. And I loved Chrissy Amphlett and the Divinals. I just loved her. And so, but really, those who know me well will out me. So I'm just going to out myself. I had a massive I'm going to say maybe beyond crush, love obsession with, of all people, Colin Hay, the lead singer of Men at Work, that nobody had a crush on. Because I always would pick the weird ones that nobody liked. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Men at Work is amazing, though.
Yeah. And they were at that time, absolutely. And so it was so funny. And I learned so much about Australia. I had an Australian map on my bedroom wall.
No.
I did. You could have asked me anything. I could give you all the facts, everything, the states, what was happening and who was from where. And I just made it my business to know everything about Australia. I just became this really, strange kid became the strange teen who became obsessed with Australia. And so in my head, I just thought, I need to find a way to go there. I need to go to this strange and wonderful place so far away on the other side of the world. And
you did it.
I did, which nobody thought I would do. And I tell you, that's one of my greatest training lessons in tenacity, perseverance, because there really was no reason that I was going to do this. I mean, I was in high school. I wanted to do this. I had no reason to do this, but I studied fashion design when I got out of high school. And we had career days where different companies would come, and Esprit came out, which was a big clothing label in the 80s. Yeah. And they were talking about all over the world, and one of their locations was Australia. I was like, I might just follow up with a letter or a phone call to this is before emails, trust me. But and so I followed up, and I just pretended that I already worked for them. I just was like, hi, I'm just calling to, find out about when, what opportunities are there for work and da-da-da. And I think they just thought I was so strange because.
How good though.
It was funny. Well, when I think about it, for that age, I was 18 years old. And I was
tenacious, like you just said.
I just was like, I remember the woman in Melbourne, because their head office was in Melbourne, and the woman that answered, her name's Cindy, and she actually became a really good friend of mine that we're still in touch now. And but she said to me, oh, okay, so when are you going to be, because I said I was in San Diego, and she said, so when are you going to be in Australia? And I'm like, as soon as you hire me, I'll be there. I'll be there like that. I had no idea that it was so complicated and involved to get a work visa and all that. And I don't know, just the magic of things where.
And it happened.
It happened. I spoke to the managing director. He called me back. He was intrigued. Who was this person with no reason to be, And then he was coming out for a conference. We met, and the deal was done. He's like, we'll get on it. We're going to bring you out. This is great. We love your go-get-it kind of attitude, and it happened. And so a year later, I'd moved to Australia. And I didn't know anyone, but I was like,
and Melbourne. You were in Melbourne?
I went to Melbourne.
Yeah. And then, so... Because also, when I was researching you, because you were teaching at 16th Street, but that's obviously got to be down the track further timeline-wise.
Oh, yeah, far down the track. I lived in Australia for a long time, and I at the time after I got there, and I still had that bug for acting, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And I started studying with an agent that I had gone to speak to, said, well, if you really want to do anything with this, you should do some classes. And I said, yes, where, who? Yeah. And she recommended me to an acting teacher in Melbourne named Louise Talmadge. Okay. And I started working with her in classes. And then from there, someone recommended Peter Sardi to me, and I went and started working with him. And I worked with both of them for years. And then when we moved back to LA years later, I found out about Ivana Chubbuck, and I went and met with her. So I had only really worked with two teachers before. Wow. Yeah. But I loved it. And I ended up doing a lot of commercial work in Australia. Yeah. I did mainly commercial work. I did some industrials and things like that. Yeah. But I would get flown up to Sydney because I was doing Spanish language commercials, believe it or not. They were doing, they would film for the US market. Their Spanish-speaking commercials. I don't know why, but they were doing them in Australia because I guess it was, cheaper. Yeah. Who knows? And there weren't that many people that spoke with a perfect, authentic accent, Mexican accent. How
interesting!
Yeah, so I booked a lot of stuff that way, and I loved it more and more, and just loved my classes, and was wanting to get into more stuff. And then we moved back to LA, and then I started with Ivana, and that was 20 years ago. And so, and then I was in her class forever and for years. And when I left to head back to Melbourne, because my husband had a job in Melbourne and we went back, Ivana introduced me to Kim. And she said, oh, God, you've got to get her to teach for you. She's brilliant. She knows my technique inside and out. You need her to be teaching this. Because at the time, no one was teaching it in Australia. And so we started it up for the first thing at 16th Street. Yeah. Yeah. It's not funny.
It's so interesting to know now. Like, I jumped on the Ivana Chubbuck website, and there's so many teachers all over the world now that are trained in the technique and can teach it. And like, I know even in my experience, like I've had 3 different experiences with 3 different Chubbuck teachers, you know. You're my fave, by the way.
Well, of course you had to say that.
Promise. So, okay, and then you were teaching in Melbourne. Okay, so I'm probably my timeline's probably jumping around here.
Yeah.
But I have to ask about John Patrick Shanley, because that feels like a pinch yourself kind of moment.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So hang on, how many awards has he won? He's written like over 25 different plays, right?
Oh, God, he's written so many more than that. The man is prolific. Really? I can't even tell you the number of plays he's written, but the ones that are really well known, I don't know what the numbers would be, to be honest. But no, I mean, he's always writing. I mean, he has so many plays no one's ever even seen. They're just in his mind, in the computer somewhere or something. But no, he's amazing. That was a pinch yourself moment for me, particularly. Well, it would have been for anybody, to be honest. He's right,
king.
Yeah, no, he's a Pulitzer, Tony, and Oscar award-winning playwright director. He's worked with the best of the best, from Meryl Streep to Tom Hanks to
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's amazing. I mean, just everybody. He's worked with so many incredible. Timothy Chalamet, he works with a lot. And someone the other day that I recently went, I didn't realize he'd worked with her, was
Amy Adams.
Jodie Foster, Amy Adams, Deborah Messing.
Yeah.
Everybody,
And I said this to you before, his accent, that real
the Bronx accent.
Oh,
he's a Bronx boy, true and true, right?
It's a hard accent. A New York-based accent's really hard for an Aussie to do. I don't know if you probably know that, but it feels really distant and very far away. So I heard his and I was like, oh, this just feels so amazing to listen to.
It takes you to a place, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It takes you to a place.
It's like that strong. Anyway, I digress. So how did that happen? Because you guys have been working together for quite a while now.
Yeah, we have been. But how it started was in 2014, I co-founded a theater company here in LA called Australian Theater Company. And that came about because I had a lot of Australian students that I had taught back in at 16th Street and other places. And when I came back to LA, a lot of them had come to LA for work. So they were working here. And so it was great because I was able to keep coaching them and working with them. Yeah. And one of the things that came up again and again was that they would say, that they missed being able, although they loved being here and working and all of that, and they were fabulous with the American accent, honestly. It's just so impressive every time to me. But they really missed being able to work in their own language and tell their own stories and, you know, just that little sort of a community of family that was the Australian actor kind of thing. And, I heard it from enough people where I thought, there's something about this, like we should... why aren't we doing Australian plays with Australian actors? There's so many in LA. I mean, there's so many in LA. They're all here, I think. But but I wasn't thinking about creating a theater company at the time. I was coaching and working like that. So, but then I went to a reading that one of my students invited me to. She was doing. And it was for Holding the Man. Oh. And it was such a beautiful play. I didn't know the play. I wasn't familiar. And I was so deeply moved by it. And Larry Moss was considering directing it at the time. And so he was there, and I knew him from 16th Street. And so, we were chatting. And I didn't know the actor who was playing the lead character. And I didn't know... I knew some of the actors that were reading it. There was a few students of mine in it. There's like 3, I think. And... So I was just really impressed, and I reached out via email or Instagram or something. I can't remember to the guy that had arranged the reading, and he ended up being one of the co-founders of the theater company. We decided to produce this play, and
Holding the Man.
Yeah, Holding the Man, and Larry Moss did end up directing it.
Everyone listening needs to see. There's also a movie Holding the Man now.
Yeah,
as well.
it came out after we had done the play. That's right, with Ryan Court. Yeah,
so incredible.
Yeah, and so we're going to do this one play, and then it just did so well. I mean, black box theater in Hollywood doesn't get massive attention generally. It doesn't get that on the big scale that big theaters do, but
because you just explained to me before this what black box. I didn't know what black box theater was. So is that? Do you say 99 seats?
Yeah, black box theater is 99 seats.
Yeah,
or
so
under,
smaller
or
than the big.
They're
places.
more. Yeah, they're intimate houses, so they operate under a different rule. They're it's a smaller theater. The budget is much smaller. Like, people basically create theater that they put their money into to be able to make. It's not like there's no big budgets or anything like
projects.
that. Yeah, it is. It is. And so this was black box theater, 99 seat theater. And what was I going to say about that? I've lost my train of thought.
Holding the Man, and then there was 4 of you that created.
Oh, so black box theater doesn't normally get that attention, right?
Yeah.
But we ended up getting a write-up in the LA Times. And I think it was just because Larry Moss was the director, really. And the play was very good, obviously.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have gotten that attention if someone else had been directing. I know that for sure. But Larry invited some of his friends to come, like Jason Alexander came to see it. And, I'm trying to think of all the names.
But for people listening that aren't in acting world, Larry Moss is famously linked to Leonardo DiCaprio,
yes,
right?
He's his acting coach for everything.
Yeah, so if you ever Google... And there's heaps. There's heaps. Yes.
Heaps.
Okay.
Nathan Lane, who's the king of Broadway, and he always works with him. Lots of people. But, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Is so if you hear Larry Moss, you're kind of like ears prick up.
Yeah, definitely.
But actors and non-actors as well. I think people he's a pretty profound person and this is what made me, when I was researching you, get so excited about you working with John Patrick Shanley, because I audited Larry Moss working on Doubt.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I was blown away.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never read the play before.
Oh, really?
And so it was my first taste, and my first taste was Larry working on it.
What a great way to be introduced to it.
Right? And that's when when I started researching you, I was like, putting all these dots together.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've worked with such incredible people.
Yeah, I've been very lucky, and I really have. I've worked really hard, but that doesn't always produce, that the kind of opportunities that I've had. There's a lot of people working hard that don't have those opportunities, and there's many more I wish I had. So it's not, but still, I know that I've been very lucky. I acknowledge the fact that, and I'm so grateful, because a lot of times I'm pinching myself going, why? Like, why me?
But could it also be that weird girl, that quirk and that imagination? And I know, as a student of yours, because I think acting, there's a component of it where you have to be really courageous and kind of face a fear, and to have your real nurturing nature around it. I know that I'm I might stuff this up right now, but it's okay. And it's so you've got such a lovely combination of tenacity, but there's a real nurturing side to you too. So I think that's, and I read a quote where you said my passion is discovering that light bulb moment with actors.
Yeah,
is that kind of what makes you tick? And that's
absolutely. I love seeing when they're sort of looking at you like a deer in the headlights, and they're just there's so much information, and their heads swirling, and and you're thinking, oh gosh, okay, I need to find a different way in, and because ultimately always it's if an actor is not understanding something, it's my responsibility to make sure that they do. Always. It's not, because really it's not like they don't want to do well. It's not like actors show up and they're like, hey, I just want to be really shit at this. And they
totally
want to learn. So if they're going there and they're showing up and they're paying their money to be there, then my job, my responsibility is to make sure that I make it as simple as possible for them. And that's not always easy because it's not simple. It's multi-layered and there's a lot to it. But, I think it's such a gift for me. Like, I'm the one getting the gift. When you see that light bulb moment come on where they're like, oh my God, I just got something. Or like, yes. Oh my God, that changes everything. And you're like, yes. I want to jump up and celebrate with them.
But that's also a testament to you as well, because you're creating a space where they feel safe to try new things on, or
that's really important to me.
Yeah, like even, I don't know if you remember, we worked together and I played 2 different characters.
That's right.
And one
from the same play.
Yeah, and one came really natural. Like I was like, oh,
that's right.
This feels like just putting on a T-shirt. This feels great.
Yeah.
And the other one I really struggled with, and it felt the opposite to my natural state.
Yes.
And I remember you just said one thing at the end. You were like, you could feel that I was stuck. I knew you could feel it. And I felt so safe to feel like I wasn't getting it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you asked me one single question, like you just said, like, how are you feeling right now? How are you? And I was like, I feel like I could fail at this or something. And then you were like, go. And then we did the scene. It ran so much
better. Go fail. Yeah.
And it was just like one little, it was almost like you opened a little door that I didn't see was there. Mm-hmm. And I just had to be brave enough to step it. You were like, come into this little room. You're fine. And then it was amazing, the feeling afterwards, because I will say this, and I actually read it on your Instagram. A student gave it as a testimonial, but one side that I never, and I wasn't planning on talking about this with you today, but one side of acting and actors that I don't know if it's an Australian thing because that's been my experience with training, but there's a mean side and there's a real competitive side and there's a jealousy side.
Between actors?
Yeah, yeah. And I've definitely experienced it just in training. And I noticed someone wrote a beautiful testimonial about you, and he wrote, Jackie Diamond is the key to the next step in nurturing you in this sometimes unkind profession. The woman is a pro. And that was by a guy called Dustin
Gullidge.
Yeah.
He was beautiful. I directed him in a John Patrick Shanley play.
Oh, there you go, full circle.
Yeah, full circle. And he did our John Patrick Shanley workshop in New York.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I met him, is he applied for that, did it, and he really, he was just such a beautiful and generous actor. And he'd worked on Broadway with Tom Hanks. He originated a role in Nora Ephron play. And so he came with his own full, life. And he was amazing to work with in the workshop. And I knew that I wanted to speak to him about doing this role when I was going to direct this play.
How cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think back to that, it's a testament to you, because I think, and I don't know if it's the Aussie tall poppy thing, but I've found it a bit I remember there were a few times I put a scene up and be really nervous, but at the end of it feel so happy that I kind of got outside my comfort zone. And a mate from my class would be like, oh, well, you're not a theatre girl. You didn't do that well. And I was like, wow.
That's terrible. My God, who would say that? That's awful.
But that stuff can kind of happen a little bit in Australia. And I think the media industry in Australia is competitive. And
the market's smaller.
Tiny.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is more competition. You see less of that here, funnily enough.
I've heard it's the opposite here.
People are really excited for you when you do well. And they're there for you when you don't. It's very different. You'll see, we're about to start classes, weekly classes, and Lola's coming into my class again. I'm very excited. And you'll see it's a really beautiful and welcoming community. I mean, the actors are there for you. And if you feel like I didn't get there, or, my inner work didn't kind of, didn't really sustain me in this, and I wasn't able to kind of get where I wanted to go with it or whatever. They're like, that was great. You did this and this was great. And they'll pull out the things that you did that they loved, and it's a supportive community. It's really beautiful.
Oh, I'm so excited. In Australia, when I do a health segment on morning TV, you will then get kind of held for 3 months, because they've got other nutritionists or health professionals that they'll put in your place, and they don't want the audience to get tired of you. And then so I've got a book coming out in a few months, and so I'm on what's called a media blackout. Yeah, but I'm on what's called a media blackout right now. So I can't even do podcasts as a guest, because Australian, because the media world is so much smaller.
Right.
You kind of want to save up and then be like, I'm here.
Right.
It's
That's so
the
interesting.
opposite. And when I've met with agents here in America, they're like, oh, no, that's the opposite way. We would say the more that you can do, the more you can spread your message or be out there.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating. And I did have a question here, and this is now like more generalized acting questions, but do you find a massive difference between Australian actors and American actors?
No, I don't find a massive difference between them, but I will say that what I loved about Australian actors, and I found there was this one difference, is that Australian actors come more from that British mentality of like really studying the classics and doing a conservatory type program, whether it's a 2-year or or they study overseas, they go to London or they go to New York and they do like a 3-year program, and so I found it an absolute joy to work with Australian actors because they had that sense of understanding already. There was like a shortcut that you could do. You could go in and they understood something about it, or they were at least familiar with it. Part of this technique, at the studio, at Ivana's studio, is the minimum is 6 to 8 hours rehearsal a week.
Yeah, and you told us that at the start of our class. I remember I went in, I did a self-tape right before I moved here, and I called another actor friend. I was like, can we put this tape down together? It's going to be great for both our show reels anyway. Let's just do it together. I walked in, I had the full Chubbuck 12 steps written on all over my script down the,
You're such a little tenacious worker, you, Lola.
But down, listen, my script was like a lot of grey lead pencil going on here and beats, actions, the works, right? And I looked at the other actor's script and it was empty. Like it was just the beauty. And I thought, oh, maybe they keep a clean one for their audition, but I don't know. And I got into the self-tape and I was like, oh, my goodness, they've just learnt on accent. That's all that's happened here.
Oh, wow.
So there was no choices. There was nothing that was like – and it was I'd never experienced that before. And I'm not saying one was better than the other, but it made me think – I've done all this work.
But I mean, one is better than the other, to be honest, because if you've not made any choices about the role that you're playing, how can you possibly do anything that has any real truth to it?
Yeah.
How?
It was a really loaded scene. Like it was a really loaded brother-sister. Like it was big.
It was relationship. I mean, all the best, works are always relationship-based.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's a strange thing, this learning by rote and memorizing everything.
Yeah.
I have found, because I thought that too, back when I was first kind of, I've got to memorize all my lines. And what I found over many, many years of doing this is that you don't need to worry about memorizing your lines if you do the work.
Totally.
Because if you're doing the work, you're absorbing them as you're going. And you'll find by the end of it, you pretty much know it.
Yeah.
I mean, you might want to run it through and run lines for a bit to kind of just whatever. But the lines will come through the work. Because the thing is, you're also making choices as you go through the work. So as you're making choices, you're having to personalize things. And so when you're reading a certain section, you've already personalized it with certain things that will make you connected. It's a way in for you, right? So you've had to really look at that and think about it and make strong choices and do all of that kind of inner work. So by the time you finished, you're like, I already know it.
Totally. I completely agree with you.
So don't go, I think that's the thing is like people go back to front. They're like, I'm going to memorize the lines and then I'm going to maybe do some work on it. And it's like, don't worry about memorizing the lines. Do the work. And then at the end, you might need a little brush up on the lines. But for the most part, you'll have them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's a mistake that I always make, so I'm excited to ask about mistakes that you see that are common with actors. But for me, so yes, I'll do all that work. But when I do all that work, I'll hold on really tight. So that 12th step in the Ivana Chubbuck technique, which is let it go. I'm not so good at that, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why. Because you are so good at so many different things that you do, which require you to be very structured. You know, you're like, you do things 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you make sure every box is checked. And, you know, that's what makes you, well, one of the things that makes you so successful at all the different things that you do. And that's great, but it's the hardest thing to let go of. You know, you have to be able to let it go, because otherwise you do all this beautiful work and then you're still living in it.
Yeah.
And that means when you get up to perform, whether it's, you know, whether it's in class or whether you're actually like on the stage or on set or whatever, we're going to see the wheels turning.
Yeah.
Because we're going to see you thinking about, oh, okay, so right now I'm going to have this behavior, or I've written this down. And so then it feels choreographed and it feels really unnatural. And I've had a lot of actors say like, oh, I don't want to make all those choices because I want to just kind of go with the flow and the vibe. I don't want to think about it. It's like, no. You do think about it and you do write down as many possibilities as possible, because that will allow you to be able to have the freedom to just see what comes organically in the moment.
Yeah.
But you've got to have the work in place to be able to let it go. You know,
Totally.
some people do all this beautiful work and they can't let it go. Like you were saying, a lot of people struggle with that. That 12th step is actually really, really hard for a lot of people, the letting it go, because they've done all this work. They want to, it's like, well, I'm not throwing it away. I worked hard for this, you know? And so they want to hang on to it tooth and nail. But then there's the opposite too. There's people who are like, yeah, I'm just going to let it all go. But they haven't done the work. And if you haven't done the work, you can't let it go.
Do you know, I got a wonderful note one day, and it was so hard to swallow, but it totally fit me. Stop trying so hard. And I was like, oh, that's the hardest thing to hear. But it was so perfect, because I was like, no one needs to see all the work you've done, Lola. Like it's in your bones. Like it's with you. You don't need to be like, look at what I've done. It's like you need to trust in what you've done, you know?
Yeah. I actually shared, I think it was to my story a couple weeks ago, a quote that I saw that I really loved, because it's the truth, you know, about what so many actors go through. And it was something along the lines of, and I wish I could remember it perfectly, but it was something along the lines of people don't begin to understand the amount of work that you do as an actor. They just, you know, it's there, right? They don't understand what it takes to be an actor.
Totally.
And they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? And they shouldn't. I mean, the work should be, doing all that work allows you, if you're really doing the work and you're really going for it, right? It allows you to be effortless.
Of course.
That's why the best, it's like, oh God, they make it look so easy.
Yeah.
And you're like, couldn't be further from the truth. You know, it's a skill, it's a craft. They make it look easy because people who master their craft make it look that way, but they work really hard to make it look. And that's not even just as an actor, right? You see a great cellist playing, you're like, oh my God, it's just like floating through the air. That took years of every day.
You're making me so excited for class.
I'm so excited for class.
I do this thing where, I can't believe I'm admitting this to you, but I do this thing where I'm like, oh, maybe my bones is to be a TV host because acting's really scary, and it's this protection thing I think I do. So now I'm like, you've made me so hungry. Another thing you post on your Instagram I love, and it's
I love that my Instagram's making such a mark on you.
It'll be tagged in the show notes. But well, it's how I research a lot of people, because it's a creative and visual way that people share themselves.
That's true.
And this was a quote that said, every master was once a beginner. Now, I want to know, and I've asked this and I've heard a lot of teachers speak to this, but how much is hard work and how much is natural talent?
I think most of it is hard work, to be honest with you. I think there is natural talent, absolutely. I mean, some people just have an affinity and it's just integral to who they are, right? They're doing things before they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm a master at anything, but, you know, like I was saying about, I was doing stuff, I didn't know that's what that was. It was acting, you know, make-believe and creating stories and doing things. And people are just drawn to certain things from a very early age. But I think that, you know, you have a certain spark. We all have it for something. And sometimes people spend their whole lives trying to find exactly what that spark is. But we all have something. You know, there's something in our spirit that makes us have a purpose in life. It gives us purpose, right? So, you know, there's that thing. But it doesn't matter if you have it, if you don't do the work, if you don't do anything with it. You know, do you know how many great, talented, brilliant people there are in the world who are, you know, just doing jobs they're not really fulfilled in, that they don't really love, because they're like, look, I could, but it would just be so hard. And I just don't have the time. And it's like, you make the time if it matters to you. You do. I mean, there's a lot of people who are very successful now who, put in the hard work very, very early on when it didn't make sense and they didn't have the time and they didn't have the support and they didn't have, the right geographical location to be able to do, they just weren't in ideal circumstances. But it mattered enough that they did whatever they did, whether it was working 2 jobs and then going to class or volunteering your time in class to get a free class when you couldn't afford it or, whatever it was. People find their way around it and they do it and they make it work. And sometimes it means you're not getting as much sleep. But hey, what are your 20s for, right?
Yeah. Jackie Diamond, you are such a wonderful human being. So if people want to know more about you, I'm going to put For the Actor in the show notes. But also if Aussies are coming to LA and want to take a lesson, or where do you teach?
I teach at Ivana Chubbuck Studios in Hollywood.
Awesome.
And you can go on the Ivana Chubbuck website.
I'll link it.
Yeah, and you can go on there and check out classes. You can also check out my website For the Actor, because I do also do private coaching.
Yes.
So there's lots of possibilities, but the classes are weekly in Hollywood. So
I cannot
wait. Yeah, it'd be great.
It's on Melrose, right?
It's on Melrose.
I'm so excited.
It's right in the heart of everything, and it's a really great community. I mean, look, you're working. There's work to be done, but it's in a very loving, supportive environment. My thing with actors is always like being conscious of what we're asking of them, and I was reminded of it recently, what we're asking of them. So I know that they're putting in a lot. It takes a lot for them to be there. So I want to make sure that I'm of service, that I'm valuable to them, that I can do, shed some light and guide them in something. So, it's come and do the things and fall on your face and know that you're going to be supported and loved and encouraged.
Oh, I love it. I saw this on your page as well. This is a John Patrick Shanley quote. You must find the courage in yourself in order to move forward in life. It's a muscle and it must be exercised, first a little and then more and more.
Yeah, that's a goodie.
Right? Yeah. That makes me feel so excited to keep
and there's
studying.
Another part to that quote that says, I think it's a deep breath or a big breath, a deep breath and a leap.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are, right? Taking big leaps, big deep breaths and leaping.
Let's do it, my friend.
Yeah, you're already doing it. Look at you here in LA. I love it.
Well, I'm honored to be your student, and yeah, I cannot wait to see what comes next.
Yeah, me too.
Big love.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of Fearlessly Failing. As always, thank you to our guests. And let's continue the conversation on Instagram. I'm at Yummo Lolaberry. This poddy, my word for podcast, is available on all streaming platforms. I'd love it if you could subscribe, rate, and comment. And of course, spread the love.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey, this is Cenk Uygur, host of The Young Turks, part of TYT's podcast network. We're the world's most popular progressive news show online. Not a big deal, I'm just saying. And we deliver an uncensored, unapologetic version of the news you won't get anywhere else. And that's really true. You should definitely check it out. So listen to The Young Turks on the Acast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast recommends.